Because there are so many games in Major League Baseball, things move very fast. What was once a healthy lead for the Toronto Blue Jays in the American League East, it is now down to one game. The Jays lead the Yankees by one game. Now, it's not really one game. It's really two games because the Blue Jays own the tiebreaker with the Yankees. So with 5 games remaining, the Blue Jays have a 2-game lead in the American League East. One of those teams is going to win the division, and the Blue Jays are just trying to hang on for this thing with 5 games left. And it's actually been a very newsy day in last couple days for the Blue Jays. They clinched this playoff spot. Like, congrats to the Blue Jays on clinching a playoff spot. That's awesome. Getting back to the playoffs after last year was such a disaster, and the year before that was a disaster because they made the playoffs and didn't win a playoff game. And actually, they haven't won a playoff game in a long time, but they're back. They're back in the playoffs, and they have an opportunity next week to win a playoff game, which is fantastic. But they're trying to earn the bye here and not have to play in the wild card round and skip right to the division round, and they're not doing the greatest at earning that bye. So let's get to everything that's happened here and the controversy that is unfolding with the Jays in the midst of losing 5 of their last 6 games, which isn't great at all to say. So the Blue Jays clinched the playoff spot. They DFA'd Alek Manoah, and I think that'll deserve its own video / episode. Like, that'll come out tomorrow afternoon. I just want to talk about Alek Manoah as a whole, and I'll do a whole thing on that. But they DFA'd him, which came as a shocker to, I think, everybody. I didn't think it was on the table. Nobody thought it was on the table, and it came out of nowhere. But that meant that the Blue Jays were able to activate Anthony Santander, who got activated a day earlier than expected because Ty France hurt himself in the afternoons when he was warming up for the game. So Ty France to the IL for a little bit. Santander, who hasn't played since May, they get this giant bat back in the lineup, which is awesome. With Bo out, that's going to be very helpful. And Alek Manoah is DFA'd to make room for Santander. So that's all the newsy stuff that's happening. And then on the field, what's happening is the umpires across Major League Baseball continue to screw the Blue Jays. What happened tonight is the Blue Jays lost 4-1 to the Boston Red Sox. And it wasn't pretty from the Blue Jays' perspective. Like, their bats died. They only got 3 hits. They got 1 run. Like I said, they lost 4-1. But that wasn't entirely their fault. If you can see there in the bottom of the corner there, I'm going to bring this up real big. George Springer is very upset for what unfolded in the bottom of the 2nd inning. It was a 2-1 count for Springer. You'll see him at the plate there if you're watching right now on the Jesse Blake Sports Report YouTube channel, where you should be subscribed and you should like this video. You can see right there, he is at the plate, 2-1 count, bottom of the 2nd inning, bases are loaded with 2 out. Best hitter the Blue Jays have had all season long at the plate. And what does George Springer do? He rips a ball down the left field line. But the umpire who is standing there behind third base rules that the ball is foul. And if you're familiar with the rules of baseball, you will know that if the ball passes over the third base bag, that means it is a fair ball. If it goes over the bag, it is a fair ball. And if you can see by this angle here, the ball clearly, as it disappears into the white chalk, as it passes over the bag, you can see it right there passing over the bag from this camera angle. Even there, as it appears to be past the bag, it is still in fair territory. The umpire looking at it, oh, that's even a worse view for this umpire, calls it a foul ball. So you're probably sitting there saying like, oh, just challenge it, John Schneider, go out there, challenge it. But this is not a challengeable call. You cannot challenge this call. It is not in the rules. It's just by the discretion of the umpire. And then that's it. You got to accept what the umpire says in that instance. So everybody on the field moved on. You say, okay, maybe ball don't lie. Maybe the next one's going to be a hit for Springer. Everything comes back. The next pitch of that at bat, after George Springer fouls off that ball that was going into the corner, that was going to bring in at least 2 guys because the bases were loaded. The next pitch was a called strike that was clearly outside of the zone. If you can see it here, right there, there it is on the pitch by pitch on the game day and MLB.com. The 5th pitch of the at-bat, a slider that is out of the zone, was called a strike. And George Springer was irate at the call. And as you can see here as well on the video of the pitch, it is outside of the zone. I don't know how more blatant you can get with a pitch outside of the zone. And the catcher didn't even do that good of a job framing it up. It's just outside. And the umpire at home screws George Springer by calling it a strike after the umpire at third screwed George Springer after calling it a foul ball. And the Blue Jays would muster up nothing. Nothing was strung together by the hitters at all. And that's how we sit here with the Blue Jays 1 game up on the Yankees, which is really 2 games up on the Yankees. But this George Springer thing hits harder if you are following the Blue Jays and you understand the string of events that have happened in the last couple games that have led us to believe that the entire world, the entire baseball community, all of the people working in New York, all of the people working at head office at MLB don't want the Blue Jays to win the division here, because last game, Dalton Varsho had a controversy with video review. So he goes down to make this catch on a Bobby Witt Jr. line drive. I'll bring it up for you right now. As you can see there, he catches it. He makes a pretty definitive catch with his glove. This goes to video review, and they deem it not a catch. Now, John Boy did a fantastic breakdown of this and why he believes that they would rule this not a catch, even though it very clearly looks like a catch. And he came to the conclusion that when Varsho's glove is right here, kind of snow coning the ball right there, Major League Baseball, because they ruled it not a catch at the time on the field, this snow coning of the ball with his glove facing down isn't 100% certainty that Varsho caught the ball. That's the explanation John Boy gave. I don't disagree with him at all, but it's just kind of funny that the New York offices where they make these calls for video review would make this call against the Blue Jays a couple days and 1 game before this controversy with George Springer happens, and a couple days removed from another controversy that happened. This one also involved Varsho, but this one is a fan interference call from New York where a fan reached over the wall to catch a ball, and they deemed this ball fan interference, but it would have been a home run anyways, which isn't a rule that you can rule on. You can't, that's not how the rule works. If it's fan interference, you're supposed to say that this is a double. If it's fan interference, it can't also be a home run because that contradicts what's written in the Major League Baseball rule book. So this ruling made no sense last week in this game. Then a couple of days later, you get the ruling by the Varsho catch where it looks like he caught it, but they're like, you know what? We're not too sure if he caught it. And then you get tonight with George Springer where they clearly have a fair ball and they rule it foul, and those were the only runs the Blue Jays were going to get that game. And then the next pitch is outside and they call it a strike. Everything is raining down bad calls on the Blue Jays, and I'm sorry if as a Blue Jays fan, I feel attacked by the baseball gods, and by the baseball gods, I mean everybody making decisions on and off the field for these rules. And if we bring up the schedule here for the Blue Jays, we see they got 2 more games against the Red Sox and then 3 games against the Tampa Bay Rays over the weekend. It's going to be a fight for the AL East crown. Like, this thing isn't locked up for sure. These are going to be tough games against the Red Sox, and then the Rays always play the Blue Jays tough. And the New York Yankees have a very cushy schedule. They came back tonight in the bottom of the 9th against the White Sox when it looked like, hey, the White Sox are going to do the Blue Jays a favor. They're going to win that game. It's going to be a shocker. Blue Jays won't drop any games to the Yankees, but the Yankees come back in the bottom of the 9th. They win it, and then now the Yankees have 2 more games against the White Sox, the terrible White Sox, and then they're playing the Orioles over the weekend at home, which looks like a bunch of winnable games for the Yankees. There are 5 games remaining. So it is going to be a fight. I'm hoping that Santander gets these bats going. I hope that's another breath of life into these Blue Jays, and I hope the umpires stop screwing this team out of calls that should go the Blue Jays' way. That is what I'm hopeful for over the last 5 games of the season. I come back on here, and we're all just celebrating a division championship. That is it for me tonight. Thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere in the world, but chose to be listening or watching right now, and I appreciate you for that. Good night from Toronto.